we're going to be checking out a content creator who I'm literally still subscribed to from back when I was a chud. That's the funny thing. This YouTuber's name is SomeBlackGuy. He's got 375,000 subs, though he doesn't pull quite as much viewership as he used to these days. I think his content has actually gotten better, funnily enough, and he's still doing pretty well for himself. And he's got his niche community, but personally, I think his content's gotten better and he's grown as a person from what I've seen of him, especially on Twitter. He tends to have pretty good takes nowadays. But I was sent this video that he put out about 5 months ago called Have My Political Views Changed? Interesting. For those who don't know, this guy used to be one of the OG skeptic anti-SJW YouTubers. Like one of the main ones up on the headline. So I'm excited to see how this video goes. I haven't seen it. I'm very curious about it. It seems enticing. It seems interesting. I'm excited to see what he has to say. This guy was pretty important to my radicalization. Oh, interesting, a pillow.
Ye old SJWs, notorious for complaining about things that the vast majority of people did not have a problem with. Sticking their hands in everything, complaining about Catwoman's butt, the lack of fat characters, or social things like manspreading, or not being able to wear spaghetti straps in school. You know, such a tragedy. But a lot of that stuff seems to have died down, and I don't think they're largely the ones that are complaining about stupid shit anymore. It really seems like it has shifted to the right. A lot of conservatives are complaining about Black Ariel, the Little Mermaid, Buzz Lightyear, and the lesbian kiss. Remember
This video is 5 years old. If you're wondering how, like, normal people are interpreting the right-wing messaging now, look at how negative, like, normies' view of right-wing political messaging was 5 months ago.
the whole Mr. Potato Head thing, complaining about the Dr. Seuss books that were being taken away, and they were freaking out and buying them when they were adults reading Dr. Seuss. And we can't forget about Lizzo and James Madison's flute. You know, that flute that nobody knew existed until Lizzo played it. It seems like right now the pendulum is shifted, and they're the ones complaining about a bunch of dumb shit that people just don't care about largely on average. And so that begs the question, has my politics changed, you know, with me criticizing people on the right more? Have I become woke? Have I become...
Yeah, also Lizzo played the flute very well. Like, we watched the videos of Lizzo playing that flute. She clearly knew how to play the flute. That's really all I can say. She knew how to play the flute.
An SJW, a progressive ideologue? I don't think so, but that's what this video is for. I'm going to examine it, largely for cathartic purposes because, I don't know, I just thought it would be a little fun exercise. And just stick with me, and I'll try to get through this video as quick as possible because I really could talk about this subject for like an hour, but I don't know. Less than 20 minutes is going to have to suffice. But before we get into this video, I got to give a huge...
What I'm really interested to find out is whether or not he feels like the things he got upset at the SJWs for doing or being upset about are less of a big deal than the things the right is doing. Like, does he realize the right's like, you know, when the right or when the left is cringe and annoying, it's kind of cringe and annoying and, you know, it's kind of bad. When the right gets cringe and annoying, though, which is pretty much the whole right, it gets bad. I wonder if he'll acknowledge that, like if he's made that realization.
Huge shout out to today's sponsor, and that is Into the AM.
Wait, is this like his podcast?
Into the AM is a company that makes high quality apparel, and you guys have probably seen me wear a lot of their shirts in a few of my videos. Into the AM for sponsoring this video. Love y'all.
I don't buy drip.
Go get one.
Supreme victory.
So I felt inspired to make this
My outfit costs $9.
video because I recently saw a video from TJ Kirk, the Amazing Atheist, where he essentially was going through the same thing, and then he felt like addressing it. And he was a little more thorough with it because he also used old clips of himself.
Probably not $9, probably a bit more. But no, I don't dress for drip. I just kind of wear what looks okay for the price.
To show that he is largely the same person and has the same ideals. You know, he's still just against religion, against bigotry, against, you know, like the whole trans panic that's going on right now. And he was just showing, like, I've been slapping this stuff down for over a decade. And I thought it was a pretty cool video. I thought it was really nice to kind of just show those people who are interested, or the people that are accusing him of becoming woke or whatever. And so I've had some of the same things happen to me. And why? There's a few reasons, but largely because there was a lot.
Very large right-wing audience. When you make the kind of content they made back then, you build a massive right-wing audience who builds an idea of who you are and what you believe in their head. And when you don't live up to that, their reactions may vary.
A lot of people who assumed I was, or I am, a conservative, and that's largely because of tribalism, and I'll get into that a little bit more later, but I first want to focus on what was the purpose of my channel. The main channel, SomeBlackGuy, what was the purpose for this in the first place? So I've told this before multiple times that I first started the channel because I was just wanted to stream games. I saw some of the largest creators like Markiplier, KSI, PewDiePie, pretty much.
It's funny because that's how most YouTubers start. Regardless of where they end up, most YouTubers start with a Minecraft gaming video. I did.
Just streaming games and just reacting in a stupid way, and I thought I could do that, but probably even better. I just thought, like, I could kill this, man. So when I set my channel up in 2014, I was just seeing that there was a weird thing happening in the gaming industry, you know, and that happened to be Gamergate, all of that whole stuff, which has so much stuff surrounding it. I don't need to talk about it, but I'm just saying
you should.
That was a catalyst for me to.
It's spicy. Does he follow me on Twitter? Oh, I follow him. He doesn't follow me. I expect the follow. I know he will see this. I expect that follow promptly, my friend.
To talk about things that just are annoying me. And this isn't my first rodeo of doing this. I actually had a channel before where I largely felt compelled to make content because of the wave of theocracy and a lot of religious content on YouTube, spoken word stuff and everything.
So, for those that don't know, the podcast with Demon Mama starts soon, and one of our first guests... No, I'm going to keep it a secret. Anyway, well, I don't know if it's supposed to be a secret, but I'll keep it a surprise. We will get to talk about it more in the future, but in this era of YouTube, the most popular type of content that was popping off, this community that was blowing up, that would later turn into the anti-SJW skeptic community, was the atheist community. There was an entire big community of content creators all centered around debunking Christianity and other theistic religions, and or other theisms or whatever. Mostly Christianity, though. And a lot of those creators are the ones who ended up becoming the anti-SJWs. Because from a lot of their perspectives, at least as they'd explain it, and from my perspective as well, the new crazy religious nuts were the SJWs. Their religion was wokeness, although the word wokeness didn't really get used like that back then. It existed back then, but it wasn't what it is now. But yeah, basically the idea was like SJWs considered progressive values to be a religion. And so essentially they were the new wave of evangelicals in America that were a threat to, you know, normal people's lives.
Everything. That's where it was the rise of the atheism movement, like Thunderfoot, The Amazing Atheist, Dark Matter 2525, and what have you, right? And I felt like I want to join this conversation, make some secular arguments, and then there was other things that annoyed me too, and that have always annoyed me, like the military-industrial complex. So I'll pretty much make anti-military industrial complex and secularist content. This was back around 2010. Then I largely kind of got tired of it, and I'm like, whatever. So I came back in 2014 and started making content of things that were annoying me, like, say, people's politics, like we call them the SJWs, but I would properly call them progressive ideologues, because they are progressive, and I know a lot of progressive people. I'm from California, but then there's these ideologues, these zealots that are just...
I do actually think that's a good label. I actually respect that a lot. This is actually better analysis of the left's problems than I expected, because he's actually like recognizing exactly what one of the biggest issues with the left is that leads people to the things that makes them post cringe. It's the fact that they hold a basically unquestioning, like, team sports mentality adherence to the idea of progressive values. And when you see these people on Twitter or social media or occasionally real life, you can tell they consider this to be like some sort of social clique points game of trying to out-woke each other. Unironically, you'll see that in a lot of lefty spaces. He is actually doing a good job of analyzing that here, or pointing that out. And I don't think he's doing it from a bad place. I actually like this video a lot so far.
Trying to take things too far. Maybe some of their minds were in the right place, but they were going about it in the wrong way. So when it came to video games, for example, didn't really see an issue with gaming. Just trying to enjoy some games. All of a sudden, these politics were being interjected into every gaming news outlet.
That's the key difference between this type, like the right-wing content now and the right-wing content then. Let me give an example, a direct, exact, one-for-one example of something that happened during Gamergate that I think will give you a good idea of what things were like back then. The Witcher 3 released in 2015. This was the peak of Gamergate. We're like right about to go into 2016 when Trump's going to get elected. We're in the peak of Gamergate. The Witcher 3 comes out. Fantastic game, masterpiece of a game. Might even play through it on stream, like all of it, if I have like the willpower one day. That would be fun. But it's dry. We'll do that later. Anyway, The Witcher 3 came out, and something you might know about The Witcher 3, if you're a keen, observant player, is that pretty much all the characters that are human, and even most of the inhuman characters, like elves and dwarves and whatnot, are all white. They're all white. And there were some gaming journalists at the time, Kotaku and whatnot, BuzzFeed, and your general outlets for journalism about new cultural things, made articles about the lack of racial diversity in The Witcher 3. They were, from the perspective of gamers at least, attacking The Witcher 3, demanding that it change to fit their standards, which basically left an opening for a bunch of content creators, including, I'm sure, SomeBlackGuy, to come up, to throw back at them the very, logical, response of, it's a game about Polish folklore, or it's a game inspired by Polish folklore. Of course they're white. And it's like, okay, I know it's like big brain logic bro response. Yeah, I know. On one hand, it's really dumb to get upset about a random journalist criticizing a game, regardless of what they're criticizing it for. On the other hand, I do kind of understand gamers wanting to create a culture around holding game journalists, and I mean this unironically, game journalists in the gaming journalism industry accountable for false reporting. A good example of this is The Day Before, a game that I talked about a little bit on stream at some point. It's a upcoming zombie game. At one point, it was upcoming, quote unquote. It was the #1 game on Steam. It's supposed to be like the DayZ killer, like the big next zombie game. It was #1 most wishlisted game on Steam, and it's been exposed to be basically completely fake. If there is a game, it started development within the last 6 months when the fake trailers and renders they put out to hype the game up started getting steam. And whatever they put out with their small team will not be anything close to what they've advertised. Also, there's been leaks about the really bad treatment of the devs at the company, like very toxic work environment. And on top of all of that, IGN has incessantly pushed promotion of this game. Pretty much every promotional material for this game has been posted on IGN's channel, which means IGN is just taking these clips and uploading them saying, yep, so it looks good for me, despite all the comments saying this game is clearly fake and not asking and checking to find out if it's real, because they don't fucking care. So there actually is some merit to gamers wanting to, like, hold the gaming journalism and, like, gaming coverage industry to a higher standard, but that excuse ended up going way further than I think it ever needed to go. It ended up justifying some pretty disgusting behavior, an entire culture around harassing and shitting on gaming journalists, regardless of, you know, what they do or how good they are at their job. It's just the fact they do gaming journalism means they are bad, because that word's pretty much synonymous with an insult now.
Every podcast, these platforms, they started hiring their progressive buddies and doing all these weird things, which gave rise to just charlatans and people like Anita Sarkeesian, Brianna Wu, Zoe Quinn, John Mack.
Jesus Christ. He still hates these people. Oh, dude, the funny thing is, do you know what they hated Brianna Wu, or not Brianna Wu, what's her name, Anita Sarkeesian for? When you know the story behind why they hate Anita Sarkeesian, it's the funniest shit ever. So the reason why they hate Anita Sarkeesian, and they claim that Anita Sarkeesian scammed her fans, that's what they claim, is because she did a GoFundMe for a series that she was already like a pretty prominent feminist figure online. So she did a GoFundMe for a series she was going to do about like tropes versus women in video games. That was the name of the series, and it was going to be a feminist like analysis series about video games, you know, and that was pretty much what it was. She put up a GoFundMe to fund it. You can call that a scam if you want, but I mean, people put up GoFundMes for their video projects all the time, and, you know, people are voluntarily donating. The thing is, she only asked for, like, a pretty reasonable amount. Like, the amount that she asked for, I forget what it was, but it was like, oh, yeah, it's not really, yeah, it's sounds about right. If you're going to pay like somebody to do research and like script writing, and you're going to be doing like this and that, and someone's going to be doing like the graphics and stuff. Yeah, it sounds about right. Like it did not sound like that terrible of an amount to ask, right? What ended up happening was her fans voluntarily donated way more than she asked for on the GoFundMe, and the right ran with that and said she scammed her fans. Now, I'm not going to lie, based on we've watched a couple of videos in which they did respond to a couple of SomeBlackGuy's old anti-SJW content, and I think it's pretty clear SomeBlackGuy doesn't really do research. Well, I think he's a good guy. I think he's smart, and I think his politics, like his political like core beliefs and his like morals are good, but I also think that he's just kind of, you know, in politics for the fun. I think he's kind of lazy when it comes to vetting this stuff. It was very clear back with his anti-SJW content, and even now, that I don't even think he knows this story behind Anita Sarkeesian supposedly scamming her fans. If I asked him, tell me in detail how Anita Sarkeesian scammed her fans, I feel like he couldn't do it. I do have problems with Anita Sarkeesian, for sure, but, like, still, yeah. And I don't even remember what Brianna Wu did that these people have such a problem with. I think it's literally just because she's a feminist that criticized games, but she got, like, the most insane swatting and doxing and fucking, like, there was a literal TV documentary. The first time I ever heard about Brianna Wu was from a TV documentary that came on TV about, like, and it was like a documentary about multiple people who had been harassed and pursued by people on the internet, and like had to literally upend their lives and move and do all this stuff to avoid being hunted by weirdos on the internet. And Brianna Wu was one of them in that documentary. And I was like a teenager, and I saw that, I remember. So I don't think she did anything that would justify like these people having like any hard feelings nowadays, from like the skeptic sphere. Who else? Zoe Quinn. Literally all Zoe Quinn did was get accused of cheating on her boyfriend by her, oh my god, the Zoe Quinn story is such a shit show. You know this guy doesn't know the Zoe Quinn story and would not use Zoe Quinn as an example if he knew what happened to them, because oh my god. The Zoe Quinn story, oh, it's such a tangled loop, but like, basically, the right ended up accusing Zoe Quinn of pushing the guy to committing suicide, but there was a shit ton of evidence that he was like a sexual abuser. It might have been a different guy than who started the Zoe post meme from 26. It's a whole fucking thing. Regardless, when you actually look at like the history of Zoe Quinn, it's just a bunch of weirdos on the internet that are mad on behalf of a guy who's a bitter ex. That's literally it. It's a bunch of dudes mad on the behalf of a guy who is a bitter ex to Zoe Quinn. And it's just the most ridiculous, embarrassing shit ever.
Like Anita Sarkeesian, Brianna Wu, Zoe Quinn, John McIntosh, you know, just so on and so forth.
What's John McIntosh do? I think John McIntosh makes Culture Detective. Yeah, Pop Culture Detective. This channel does really well too. Really good videos as well. That's McIntosh, I think. Yeah. Pop Culture Detective. Good channel. Good channel.
There were so many of these people that kind of sprung up on YouTube and started making all this content, and it was just nonsense. It was so stupid. It was one of those things like, what are we doing here? So I felt compelled to trash that stuff. And so along the same lines, I started dipping myself further into politics and social, you know, things that were happening around that time. Like, obviously,
So, I like this video because he is acknowledging, like, clear growth as a person, but what he isn't acknowledging is your politics have changed. Or you're still pretty dumb when it comes to your politics. Because, like, yeah, I know it's funny because literally, like, just this week, we watched a video that took apart SomeBlackGuy's old video on Bill Nye talking about sex and gender on his new show that he had back on Netflix back in the day. And this guy just loses his mind about how Bill Nye is now anti-science and he's gone woke and this is his childhood destroyed. And literally every claim that this guy makes in response to Bill Nye, he says, like, show me some evidence for blank, show me some evidence for blank, is like an argument against Bill Nye. And literally, if you Google those questions, you'll find studies that bring up the answers. Like, it's absurd. These YouTubers refuse to do any research and actually, like, look into this stuff. So they were having very gut reaction responses to these things. So what I imagine is SomeBlackGuy remembers this as, like, he remembers these things as he experienced and thought of them back then. But if he could go back and look at these entire scenarios with his current perspective, I bet he'd have a very different perspective or a very different opinion on all of it if you were to, like, look over all that again and actually see the information.
police brutality and excessive force has always been a big issue. It's something that I've always had a huge problem.
I feel like I have to point this out every time, but chat, have you noticed it? This is like one of the most common streamer YouTuber mics. Like, it's always so funny whenever we're watching a YouTuber or a content creator and it's like, oh, same mic.
And so when we started talking about black people being killed by the police, and then movements like Black Lives Matter sprung up, and what I saw what was happening to the movements, I felt compelled to say something as well. I thought the way that it was, the direction that it was going in, and the leadership, I thought it was a bunch of BS. Not the message, because I've explained this before, that the message, it makes sense. I mean, I've seen like too much police brutality. I've seen way too much. I think we've all seen that stuff. We've all seen that it's a huge problem. So
True.
I didn't have no problem getting behind that. I used to even be a part of an organization. I don't think it exists anymore, but it was called Cop Block. You know, it was basically surveilling these motherfuckers to, you know, not let them get away with so much stuff, right? So that was never a problem for me. It was just like anything else, like the Occupy Wall Street, the Tea Party, all this stuff. You would see like people taking advantage of people who actually tried to mean well, and then it turned into like a cesspool of stuff. But largely, that stuff has died down, and a lot of my gripes have died down. Same with this whole spear, because remember, guys, remember the content that was coming out on YouTube and all these outlets. Remember BuzzFeed, Vice was getting crazy, MTV News. Remember,
I don't think this is him deliberately, like, I think he just remembers, like, all of this stuff as he did back then. To be fair, the man-spreading shit was cancer. Like, the man-spreading thing is one of those things that I think we can all agree, like, the left needed to leave behind. Feminism needed to never utter those words. Mansplaining is one of those words that, like, I still hear mansplaining pretty often from people sometimes, but that's a word I think I'm pretty glad that feminists and the left pretty much let die, because that was really bad optics. Pretty much any, like, thing that has man in front of it and then, like, as like a prefix, and then it's supposed to be an insult. If like feminist activists are doing it, you're making feminism look bad. It's just, generally speaking, if you're going to do feminist activism, you do not want to make it look like you're advocating for, like, women's superiority, because guys by default will already think that's what feminism is advocating for. You have to actively fight to break that, like, expectation and that stereotype. There'd be a lot more men in support of feminism if they just realized, wait a second, feminism isn't, like, about just empowering women to be as or more powerful than men. It's, like, about deconstructing the social barriers that, like, keep us into rigid, like, places in society and force us into certain roles. And, like, it's about men and women as well, and it's about, like, basically breaking down these expectations and making everyone happier and freer from the system that was built by massive pieces of shit over the course of, you know, thousands of years ago, but we still have, moving on to into the present, this sort of, like, patriarchal idea of how to run a society. You know, I think that is a way better way to represent feminism than how many feminist outlets were doing so back in, like, 2015, 2016.
Manspreading, the New Year's resolutions for white people.
Yeah, that was bad.
Remember all these stupid videos that were popping up?
Should we got to do it, like, another one of those segments where we go back when we watch, like, the cringe lefty content from back in the day. Like, we've been watching some of the golden lefty, like, breadtube content, but we should go back and watch the fucking the garbage, the shit that was coming out during Gamergate that was helping Gamergate along. Just to see, like, what was hurting the left back then? What kind of messaging and behavior was hurting the left? Humongous what? I saw that. Did you guys see the humongous what Twitter, humongous what video trending on Twitter with, like, 3 million likes as if it was a brand new video? These fucking Zoomers who probably weren't even alive or able to speak when that video originally dropped, they think that video is recent and brand new. The quote tweets were all from, like, accounts that, like, if you're on Twitter, you can tell, like, what accounts are owned by Zoomers based on, like, the name and profile picture. You can just kind of tell. And it's all them, like, quote tweeting, like, these women have gone so far, like, holy, like, and it's literally the humongous what video. There were a few people who recognized it and called it out, but so many fucking Zoomers were like, oh my god, this happened recently? And I just watched it and I was like, we're back. We are back.
Where do you... Is that still happening? No, it isn't. It isn't happening anymore. So largely that stuff went away. It died out. And it's, like, cool, because that's what I've always wanted. I've said multiple times that, all right, I would love for this to go away and that I can focus on other things. And largely, that's what's happening. The shift that you're seeing, if you're thinking there's a shift at all, it's not a shift in my ideals. It's just a shift in the people that are being the craziest. Like, it was all these progressive ideologues that were just overstepping their bounds, right? And then when the rise of the anti-SJW movement and things like that came up in prominence, it also gave a rise to right-winged and conservative content.
True.
Now, if you look at, say, who are the most popular political pundits on YouTube and whatnot, they're conservatives. Or they may claim to be on the left, but they're only spewing conservative talking points because it is the most popular. And I've always said that it's a pendulum. Because if you guys remember, maybe some of you weren't really alive or you were babies, but in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, there was that whole, oh, we got to ban video games again. And it happened 2 decades before that as well.
He's not wrong here. It does seem there's sort of a cultural political pendulum that we see, where back in, the early 2000s and the 2000s, it was like the right was this authoritarian push to ban video games like Grand Theft Auto. There were these evangelical Christian satanic panic types. The Bush era was really bad for the right in terms of their perception by internet culture. And so going into the early 2010s, the internet was pretty much primed and in a more progressive leaning area in regards to its political leanings. But then Gamergate came around, and that's when things started to swing more towards the right. You had BreadTube come around and all that stuff that happened when all the left tubers blew up. Things started to move to the left again, and now we're back in an era of things being more dominant on the right. It does seem to be kind of a cycle, but every time the right loses more prominence, they always take 1 step forward and 2 steps back.
Well, the Christian right was rising up and trying to get everything banned, and it's how they got the parental advisory on the music that you listen to. There's these things, and it's a pendulum, and it's a problem with these zealots on the left and the right. But here's the biggest difference. The zealots on the right are much more dangerous because at least the one.
There it is. This was the line I was hoping for. Because while blue-haired SJW college students screaming and throwing trash cans at windows may be annoying and cringe and maybe dangerous on a very small scale, the right as a political prescription is actively seeking to create a world in which a lot of minority groups that I think both me and SomeBlackGuy agree deserve the right to exist and live their lives unimpeded, like gay people being able to get married and live their lives, trans people being able to do their own thing. The right literally can't stand for those people to be allowed to exist in this country. The big problem with the left is, yeah, they're cringe and they post cringe and stuff like that, and they're very we're very loud and we can be cringy and over the top with what we want and all that. That's true. Yeah, the left has that problem. But as a political prescription, the thing the right is fighting for is to create an America where significant portions of our population are not allowed to exist, whether it be because of race, sexuality, gender identity. As many conservatives may front that they actually don't care about these things and aren't bigoted, they always show their ass eventually, especially right now where they're all actively saying no adult should even be allowed to transition, and they're trying to ban it across the country in all the red states. I think it's pretty clear, yeah, the right is way more dangerous. They hold actual institutional power. And not only that, the left is fine with an America where the ideals of the left are reached. Everyone's able to just do their thing, equality, all that good stuff. And there are allowed to be conservatives out there just living in bitter hatred, doing their own thing in their little suburban communities or their little swamp shack or wherever they want to live. But if the right wins, they're not going to let the left just say GG and walk it off, right? It's going to be straight to the death camps for at least a fair amount of minority groups here. The trans and gay people, a lot of Republicans want to send them to death camps and have been open about it. So, yeah, it's the stakes are kind of important to consider.
Problem with these zealots on the left and the right. But here's the biggest difference. The zealots on the right are much more dangerous because at least the ones on the left were just pesky flies. They were just annoying. The ones that really had any dangerous rhetoric didn't get anywhere. True. Nothing happened with them. When you hear about advocating for violence against, we got to fight fascism, and the way you got to fight fascism is by being violent or something. There's rhetoric spewing out like that. That was happening. And it was like, yo, that's not cool. Violence begets violence.
One thing that like frustrates me about these content creators is their view of the world is so like childish, you know? And I mean this like, I don't want to make this sound insulting, but it is kind of childish. Like, the far right does not use the violence of the left, that it like the violence of Antifa people, as motivation for the violence that they inflict. The right's goals are violence upon like the minority groups they hate. When people who are in like Antifa groups and whatnot act in violence against them, that's them finally breaking the line, I guess you could say, and finally throwing a punch at a bunch of people who are taunting. It looks really bad when someone finally does it, but these far-right militia types, these like Nazi types, these right-wing politicians and whatnot, it doesn't matter what the left does, how polite the left is. The Democrats are known for being way too polite in politics and not being willing to play dirty like the Republicans. It doesn't matter how nice the left plays. The right is not going to appreciate that and be like, wow, what good sports, and play fair too. Their only motivation is to win by all means necessary. So sometimes the left is going to have to adopt that mindset sometimes, especially if it's a protest like a pride march and there's a bunch of like Proud Boys with, you know, strapped to the fucking teeth standing there, and there's a bunch of like Antifa dudes also strapped to the teeth there, and it's like, all right, let's form a wall between the parade and this counter protest of Nazis and see what goes down. I think that's justified. And if violence breaks out in the sake of, like, protecting a marginalized community from fascists, then, well, I guess that's just how it goes.
We all know this, or at least we all should know this. They didn't get taken seriously. But you have some of the biggest conservative leaders right now making content and whatnot that are saying very hateful things.
To be clear, though, he's probably talking about, like, the Berkeley bike lock bandit and stuff like that. For those that don't remember, there was this, like, trend of finding, like, any example of a left-wing person committing violence at, like, a protest to try to, like, elevate it into the, like, attention of everybody to give the left a bad name. Andy Ngo tried it very desperately with the milkshake thing. That's where the whole milkshake thing came from. He was trying to do that at the tail end of that trend, and it failed. But prior to that, it was very successful. And one of the people who became kind of, very infamous was the Berkeley bike lock bandit. I guess there was some protest at Berkeley, and some SJW activist took like I think it was a pillowcase, put a bike lock in it, and then whacked one of the conservative or Nazi speakers in the side of the head with it and, like, cracked their skull open on video. And 4chan, the person was wearing a mask, and 4chan, like, did, like, the deep investigation and found their identity and gave it to the police, and the person was found and arrested. But yeah, that was a big story, and that person became, like, a representative of how the left is, like, a bunch of violent SJW intolerant, regressive, all the regressive left was like the big keyword back then that a lot of these YouTubers would use.
Things that are getting people, marginalized people, hurt. It's getting people in the LGBTQ community hurt. You have preachers in churches right now, probably as I'm speaking, preparing their sermons, saying really hateful and bigoted stuff. And saying it to hundreds of people, and they're just soaking it in. And it's
the crazy thing is like 20 years ago, the Mormon Church didn't allow black people to be like part of their church. And I think even to this day, they don't allow black people to be like high up members of the church. That's just Mormonism, like off the top of my head. But like, yeah, there's some like overtly like insanely hateful shit. One of the things you'll realize is when you drive through America's flyover country, you'll find a lot of like you'll get a peek into just how fucked up like a lot of the religious right-wing population is. Just the literally like highway spanning, like property spanning signs along the highway that are just like Jesus is king, Trump love, big Confederate flags, even in like Northern California, up in the farmlands with all of the the trees where they're doing all the farming, just giant signs like billboards that are just like trying to push their hateful values onto random like people driving through. You get out of a big city in a lot of this country, and you're actively being bombarded with advertisements for hate. Because these people, like, they aren't, like, just keeping to their values and keeping to themselves. They're pretty proud of this shit. They're pretty proud of their hate, a lot of them are. Not all of them, but a lot of them are pretty damn proud and open about it. The thing is, they find excuses for it. You know, they fly a big old Confederate flag and they say, oh, no, it's just my heritage. It's my heritage. Yeah, your heritage of being a loser traitor.
It's all being filmed and nobody's checking it. I wouldn't say nobody. There are people checking it, but largely there isn't a movement checking these people.
Hey,
there isn't movements
Gretel.
checking people like Matt Walsh saying that transgender or gender ideology is one of the greatest evils in the world. What does that say to his audience? Or say what has happened with Kanye recently? I don't need to say anything about it.
Everything he's saying is fire. He's just true. Based. He's correct. There's nothing I can say to this. He's absolutely correct. Matt Walsh is engaging in absolutely genocidal rhetoric. He's pointing it out. What is his audience supposed to get from that? He knows. And he was an anti-SJW YouTuber back in the day. And he knows that what Matt Walsh is doing is clearly implying that his audience should be in favor of committing violence on trans people. Because what other logical conclusion does the average person have being told by a large, trustworthy media pundit that a large group of people in this country are all a bunch of predators going after your children? How do most people logically respond to that information? That's how most Americans respond to that information.
About that, but you see, where does the anti-Semitic rhetoric come from? It comes from the extreme right. So the extreme right loved his talking points to the point where they came out and agreed with him, put posters, and did salutes. I mean, you see this happening in real time, and this to me is much more important to talk about than the old anti-SJW stuff of the past. Because largely, like I've said, it's died down. All of those big videos and outlets and all that stuff, the giant protest with all of the pink-haired and red-haired and all that stuff, where is that stuff? When you saw that girl in the inauguration, when Trump got inaugurated.
Well, now it's TikTok. The right has basically had to get more desperate. Now they go to random people, like random teenagers' TikTok accounts. It's like, look, these people exist. It used to be like, look at these people doing crazy shit in public and doing stuff to other people. Now it's, look at these people who dare to exist on their private social media accounts on a different platform.
And she was screaming and stuff. They keep reusing that same thing because they don't have any new content. That stuff is a relic now.
Dude, it's so wild. Like, he mentions the screaming SJW thing. It's wild even when you know the story behind those images, right? You guys know the one of the blonde-haired girl with the glasses and the red shirt, right? That's like, looking all triggered and angry. I've actually seen that one used in a lot of like pro-Elon Musk left so triggered memes lately. And the funny thing is, I always just want to quote tweet any meme that uses that image with a link to the original video that image comes from. Because it's one of the most, it's got to be the perfect example of how overblown the entire SJW, fear-mongering craze was. She was literally just calmly talking. She just has an expressive face. That's it. She was at a protest. She didn't even look like she was there to protest. She seemed like she was just walking through and just kind of, joined the whole thing to see what was going on. And then some, clearly Nazi guy, he's screaming about, N-words and S-slurs and lots of different slurs and words that I can't say. He's really loud and racist, is what I'll say. Very clear, you can't deny it. This guy's like the textbook like redneck bigot, like Confederate flag hat, like yeah brother, like that kind of conservative. And he's like screaming in her face, like, I don't want them illegals coming in my country. And she's just like, they aren't illegals. And she was literally just like quietly, like at a normal speaking voice, just like speaking like, I don't think they're illegals. And she like just had like a expressive face at one point while speaking completely normally. Like most like immigrants in America aren't illegal. I don't think. Like she was just calmly replying. I don't even know if her response was right, but it doesn't matter. She wasn't angry or yelling at all. It's literally just they clipped a screenshot of her making a face like mid speaking, and that image has become like the poster image for the right's anti-left propaganda. And the fact that when you know the story behind that image, you know the entire thing is bullshit, basically speaks to everything that image represents for the right, doesn't it? It was all bullshit, and it still is. Behind every right-wing anecdotal propaganda story is the actual truth that that you have to dig through their lies to find.
Now, things have shifted, and I'm just shifting to talk trash about the things that are annoying me the most right now. And so now, in the beginning of the video, okay. So in the beginning of the video, I talked about the reason why people even think that I'm a conservative now at the beginning of the video, I said the reason why people would think I'm a conservative or anything.
I think that bit was supposed to be edited out. I think he missed that in the editing. Oh, we caught an editing error. There's probably a few of those in my videos too. Don't point them out. Or do point them out in the comments. It boosts my engagement. I think I honestly do think that if SomeBlackGuy was more attentive to researching the things he was discussing and wasn't just jumping on bandwagons with the anti-SJW crew, he would probably have a much different opinion here. Things like the backstory behind Anita Sarkeesian, Brianna Wu, and Zoe Quinn. Things like the humongous what video and the screaming SJW lady. I don't know. I feel like if even the Bill Nye like more than two genders thing and sex is non-binary thing, like if he just did some research on these things, he'd probably be like, oh, okay. Oh, Bill Nye was right. All right, cool. And he'd have a different take, but he'd get canceled. He would have gotten canceled to hell if he'd done that, if he went against the grain.
Like that, it was because of tribalism. And I just kind of want to explain that a little bit because everybody knows what tribalism is, but there's different forms of it. So like really quick, when it comes to sports, right? When you talk about sports, there's tribalism in sports, and your favorite sports team, you're going to rep for them. But one thing that's really important, you can also criticize them. You can criticize your team. If they're doing bad, you want to trash them because you want to hold them to a higher standard. You want them to win. And the thing is, you don't want them to win at any means necessary at all costs. You want them to win with dignity. That's how.
I mean, it depends on your political opponents. When your political opponents want your friends to not exist, like my political opponent, I'm friends with trans people. I'm friends with gay people. Like my friends are at risk of being like not alive anymore if the right has their way with the entirety of this country's like government. Like, if the right had full governmental control and they were able to succeed in making Trump dictator of this country, yeah, my LGBT friends are fucking done. And I'm probably not going to be long after them, you know? They're probably going to send sympathizers in next. Because whether or not Trump is a fascist, the people that he supports, or I should say that support him most fervently to keep him in power, are fascist and genocidal, without a doubt. I think after the January 6th insurrection, that's pretty obvious. Trump has built a base of people that literally don't care about democracy. They just want to get him into a place of dictatorial power. And you know this because a lot of them have signs that say, Trump, no year. They just want Trump. Some of them will even say Trump, infinite terms in some way. Like they'll indicate they want him for infinite terms. They don't indicate Trump 2024, 20 whatever anymore. They just say Trump. Because they just want Trump. That's it. No terms, just Trump forever. They want him to be fucking king. They want the Trump family to basically run this country forever.
People largely hold their sports teams and sports organizations. Now, when it comes to tribalism within politics, it's different because obviously people want to win. They're going to rep for their side. America right now, it's just left and right, liberal and conservative pretty much. That's mostly it. But the difference between the sports tribalism and the political tribalism is that largely overall,
lives are
people
at stake.
Don't criticize their own side. They kind of just rock with them no matter what. Just let it fly.
Well, I think that's a pretty good insight into the way that some black guy views politics. The biggest difference between politics and sports is people in politics don't criticize their own side like they do in sports. The biggest difference between politics and sports is that in politics, the entire, what side wins determines who gets to live and who dies. Whatever group you want to identify, the working class, poor people, homeless people, minority groups, gender and sexual minority demographics, whatever it may be, these people's lives is determined by what political side wins. The left's what's got to win. If the right seized full control, then they don't get to live anymore.
And the most important thing is winning at all cost. There are conservative talk mouthpieces out there that are trying to just put anybody in. Dr. Oz, Herschel Walker, people that have no business being in Congress.
Zan, just look at the number of conservatives posting their shit where they're like Trump Jr. 2028 to 2036, Ivanka 2036 to 2044. They literally just want a new monarchy. Yeah, that's what I said. They want the Trump family dynasty to control this country for ever. That's literally what I said. Yeah, no, it's not a secret that these people have signs announcing it. Before I left Florida, every other house had a sign indicating they wanted Trump beyond the term limits that exist. They wanted to break the term limits for Trump to stay in power. That's dictatorship, pretty much. Yeah, they want it, and they're open about wanting that.
Right? And then they get in because winning is so important. Having control of the Senate
Trump
is so important.
How many times have I said 4 very important words? These 4 words. Winning is a virtue. And please keep in mind that I am concerned about one thing and one thing only at this point.
Have I literally not said that to conservatives winning is a virtue? Have I not said that word for word on my streams? Chat, can you confirm? Not pretty much it is. You never miss. I'm pretty sure I've said exactly that about the right, that they believe winning is a virtue. This lady's just being open about it.
So I don't care if Herschel Walker paid to abort endangered baby eagles. I want control of the Senate.
Well, okay,
you would
there
compromise everything that you supposedly stand for just to win, and that happens so often, even on the lowest levels on YouTube, for example. There are obvious things that are backed up by science, that are backed up by facts, that are backed up by logic and reasoning, that are backed up by Occam's razor.
Oh, that's rough. After we saw the video where his Bill Nye takes get debunked because this guy. I'm sorry, maybe things have changed. That was an old video where you were going after Bill Nye, but at least then it did not seem like you were big on researching the science behind the topics you discuss. You're good at referencing that there's science behind the topics you discuss, but not really knowing it and knowing what the actual conclusion you should draw from it was, because you believe that gender was binary, sex is binary, which, as fundamental as that may sound, is not what the entire scientific and medical and biological consensus of the of everything agrees on right now, pretty much. Right now, biologists are looking at biological sex as a bimodal spectrum. Like that is how they're considering it and categorizing it. So, yeah, I just, it's not hard to find this like data or this research or this knowledge, you know, this like info that this is the scientific community's consensus. But a lot of these creators just kind of rolled with it.
Razor that people are just plugging their ears at. And that's been a lot of my content recently. I've been telling you the truth and people don't want to hear it, and they're just like, oh man, you've gone woke now. Like me talking about scientific and obvious things, like something like surgeons have worn masks for hundreds of years.
Maybe he has been doing a lot more research now. Who knows? Maybe he actually has changed his political... Maybe he hasn't changed his political takes. It's very possible he hasn't changed his political takes. It's simply that he's had more of a political awakening of sorts that's led him to doing more introspection on topics, that leads to more research and, like, you know, looking into these things. And that leads him to what seems to be more progressive stances on certain issues. He's just kind of grown up and gotten better at, like, you know, informing himself. And now his fans are like, what the fuck? Why did you go woke? And he's like, I didn't go woke. I just started, you know, actually researching and learning.
Why have they done that? To protect themselves and also to protect their patients. Like this is just an example. And then I saw a comment, someone saying, man, I hope you're not going woke. And it's that type of tribalism where it's like, oh, if you're trying to defend science in any way, shape, or form, I'm going woke now? No, I'm just trying to restore some sanity. I've said this a lot of times in some of my older videos that I'm just trying to contribute to restoring sanity to this world because so many people have gone off the rails. And right now, I feel like the conservatives are holding the ball right now. Not even feel, I know this. Like, things have gotten way too far and out of control, way more than any of the progressive ideologues have gotten. And so I've made content about this. And the biggest difference between me and a lot of people that are making content, I think you can tell, or at least people that are on the outside looking in, they can tell who's trying to tell the truth and who's not. The people who are navigating, who have different takes.
I think it depends. It really depends on age and experience. If you're like an older person who's been online for a bit, you've got some experience, you got a good bullshit radar, then probably you can tell. That's why, like, unironically, do you guys want to see my channel analytics? If you guys want any evidence that, like, my audience, generally speaking, has life figured out, I like to go to audience, go to advanced mode, look at audience by viewer age. I'm pretty certain I can show this, yeah. Look at this. These are my stats by viewer age. 2.1% of my fans are 13 to 17 years old, while 4.4% are 45 to 54. I have twice as many people in my audience that are 45 to 54 than 13 to 17. You know why that is, right? 13 to 17 is the demographic the right is aiming their propaganda at and heavily marketing to on YouTube. 13 to 17-year-olds, yeah, many of you can fake your ages, that's true, but still, 13 to 17-year-olds aren't watching lefty political content like mine. It's not reactionary, angry, and bombastic enough for their tastes. Generally, it's not until you're 18 to 24, or even more likely, as my data would indicate, 25 to 34, that you're likely to reach the, like, level of maturity where you're going to find, like, progressive political analysis to be entertaining. The right has a monopoly on political edutainment. I say education with the biggest quotes there, on this demographic. There's my age demographic there for my viewers. The vast majority of my viewers are way fucking older than me. That's wild.
So the information that they're giving you is not consistent to your ideals because the truth is not biased. Or at least it shouldn't be, right? So the truth is, you don't know where it's going to fall. You don't know exactly where it's going to fall. And so when you try to give factual information about something, there's a possibility that you may not like what somebody's saying when it's real and it's the truth. You may not want to accept that truth, even when it's something negative, because you have a narrative in your head that this is what's happening and this is bad. And then someone tries to tell you to the contrary, actually, it's not as bad as you think. And then you want to plug your ears instead of listening and maybe asking the question, well, is that true? I appreciate the people who actually do that, but that's not large.
This is a good video. It's got its faults, but it's a good video.
Most people. And how do I know this? Because when you see people that were left-leaning before and now just making conservative leaning
it's clear they're chasing
videos
money.
And making millions of dollars, you see what is going on here. They're telling you what you want to hear. And I'm just not here for that. I'm here to just try to tell you what it's like, how it is, what's bothering me, and just trying to navigate in a truthful and integral way. That's it. And the truth doesn't make you money. You know, if you own a business, you know this. If you try to
fucking true. Holy shit. It's just true. People online are not like, they're not forking over money to hear you say the truth in the same way as they are to hear convenient lies. It's why the right has so much more money and power and platform online than the left, because their bombastic, exciting lies are more appealing to people on the internet, at least, than the left's like meticulous truth-telling.
To be honest, if you try to do things the right way, you're going to make way less money. Even when it comes to, like, say, waste management.
Yep.
You have people who cut corners and dump things places that they shouldn't dump them and destroy environments, but they profit way more. And then you have people who do it by the books and they make way less because it costs way more to go by the books and to do the proper regulations and the proper things you need to do for the EPA and all of that stuff. That's just one example, but it works the same way with YouTube. If you want to tell the truth and try to do things in an honest and integral way, you're not going to make that much money because you're just navigating through things. You're trying to be like, all right, very truthful, and then sometimes things are going to fall in different ways and it's not 100% consistent. So the best thing to do is to just follow one path, right? All right, I'm just going to continue on these sort of ideals. Now, I will say there are exceptions to the rule. Don't get me wrong. There are people that are killing it that are more, say, center left or center right or whatever, and they're trying to navigate through things, but they're also consistent. You know, I get burnt out. And especially I get burnt out of these people that say dumb shit like, oh, I always thought you were on the right or something. And to those people, I got to ask you, what about...
The big difference between left-wing media and right-wing media is the left doesn't have any money. You know, it used to be the biggest... Like, I used to be able to say... Yeah, the left at least has TYT. Like, TYT, in terms of, like, budget, production quality, and to an extent reach, is almost like Daily Wire or, like, Louder with Crowder or one of those other right-wing media organizations that just dominates the internet. But now they're shilling to the right. I guess rent prices in LA have gone up. I heard they have, because their studio, they must not have enough money to keep in that studio for much longer because they're shilling to the right now. So we don't even have TYT anymore. Pretty much every prominent left-wing figure is a self-made YouTuber, like, toiling away for, like, grassroots funding to make ends meet. At least that's me.
About me was it? Like, what exactly was it that it was conservative about me? I mean, you look at me, you see all the tattoos, and you see the holes in my ears. Nothing conservative about that. Definitely had no conservative views about...
I never liked Anna. I wanted to marry Anna.
About the military-industrial complex. Obviously, I'm non-religious. I believe in true freedom and true autonomy for women's bodies. I believe in people being protected. I think the government is here specifically for one job, and it's to protect its people. So that means giving them fucking healthcare, making sure they're not poor. Like, all of these things, I've always advocated for this stuff. I don't have any, like, stagnated point of view, like, oh, let's just do things.
He's always had, like, when I watched his videos a fair amount when I was younger, and he was very clearly, like, at least in the values he expressed, when he expressed his fundamental political principles, they were very clearly, like, liberal to progressive values, you know, like, very clearly, you know, this is somebody who, if not, like, falling for, like, right-wing internet propaganda, would vote Democrat without fail every election.
Because it's always been that way. Like, just, you know, conservatism in a nutshell to me is like, let's just do things because they've always been this way, and you don't even think about why. But that doesn't make any sense. Like, progressivism and progressing is the natural order of things. That's how we're supposed to do. As humans, we progress, we grow. We want to get better, we want to get healthier, we want to get stronger. And things, you don't want things to stay the same for that. So why would you want things to stay the same in other instances? Like, you have people that complain about, say, when...
Well, it's actually been studied. The conservative fear and disgust response is stronger in conservatives than in progressives and liberals, like in leftists and liberals. Like, if you show, like, something, like, gross to a conservative, like, I don't know, like, you show anything that, like, you would generally find gross to a conservative, their brain lights up more in the gross and fear sectors than progressives. So when they see something strange and unusual and different than what they're used to, a lot of conservatives, at least statistically speaking, literally feel more chemicals of fear and hate and like not understanding and disgust than like normal people do. A lot of them do like literally have fundamentally different brains.
And cars became a thing. The people who were all about horses were mad. And right now, the people that are all about cars and driving them themselves are already bitter because they're seeing the news about automatic cars. Like, they are conservative type of people because they want things to always remain the same. Instead of accepting that things are going to get better with automated cars, hundreds of thousands of lives or tens of thousands of lives are going to be saved per year. But you see where I'm getting at. Essentially, I'm the same person with a few things changing here or there, but that's normal. A lot of people...
It's environmental, not genetic. Yeah, I didn't say it was genetic. It's environmental. They're like raised and conditioned to be that way. And after, like, you know, not being conservative, that goes away from what I can tell. But like, when people who have their brains scanned, when they're exposed to certain stimuli that have conservative values, they experience more of a fear and disgust response in their brains than liberals and leftists do. That is what the data shows. It doesn't show that it's genetic. It doesn't even show that it's environmental. I think we can safely assume it's environmental, but like, we know that's true. They're reacting from fear and like misunderstanding and disgust.
People, they get information wrong and then they correct it and they're like, oh, I didn't know this. And that's largely it. I just want to put this out and I hope this clears things up. But that's it, guys.
Nice.
Thank you so much for watching.
That was a pretty good video. There'll be a link, of course, in the pinned comment down below, so please go consider leaving some support and telling some black guy that I sent you. I do like that video a lot, so go send some positive support for positive self-growth. I really don't have much else to say about that. That was a really, really good video.